Malaysia calls it the darkest day. It's mental to think that, you know, in a Western country like the US or the UK, where things should be very developed, clearly their racial relations aren't. But generally, Malaysia feels very different to how things are in the UK, in the US, and in Europe right now. Right, we are off to a place where tourists wouldn't usually go. In fact, some Malaysians don't know about it, apparently, is what I've read. Anyway, we're going to head there now, and she's heading back to the bathroom. Anyway, soon we'll be revealed into where we're heading. There's a good reason why I want to film it today. It's because what happened then has a resemblance to what is happening now in the UK and the US and across some European countries. We're in a place where normally tourists wouldn't venture, and a place that some Malaysians apparently still don't know exist. Behind me is a cemetery or memorial for people that passed away in 1969. Malaysia calls it the darkest day. And the reason we're here today, and the reason I'm here today, is because of the relevance of that day, and potentially the relevance it has to the UK and the US in the current climate, which is racial riots. So on the 13th of May 1969 there was racial riots occurred, and here we have 110 people that are buried, that are made up of mainly Chinese, Malay and some Indian gravestones. As you can see, it's completely grown over. I believe they were going to make a memorial out of it, but that is yet to be done. We're in the middle of the jungle here, almost. I know that there's a forest, there's a big forest behind us that kind of leads into a big kind of jungle, but this is out all the way in Sungai Buloh, so it's a bit of a drive outside of Kuala Lumpur. And these race riots occurred back in 1969, and if you compare it to the UK and the US, the amount of riots and protests they've had in comparison, you know, it's vast. And I wanted to come here today and look into these race riots to understand how Malaysia dealt with these race riots, and how Malaysia has such a fantastic makeup of multi-ethnicities now that seem to get along. I know that there are obviously divisions, and there's always going to be, but generally the country has avoided anything that's happening like in the US and the UK today. And what's happening in the UK and the US is a result of a black civilian being killed by a policeman, and that was a protest which goes over all of the previous killings of black people by police officers and the police community in America, and that has caused an uproar across the black community, across not just the UK but the US, across Europe. And so here we are with protests across Europe now, and I just wonder whether our countries in the West could learn from what Malaysia did and how Malaysia handled these riots, and how they kept such a country happy with racial harmony. we're going to go over to Kampung Baru, where some of the original race riots occurred, and walk down the road where the riots took place. So as you can see, there is a lot of overgrown green here, and it is obviously rather sad. I don't think these things should be forgotten. There is a saying, famous saying, that he who does not know the past, or he who does not remember the past, is doomed to repeat it. And this memorial here, or this cemetery here, this overgrown cemetery here, is one of actually two. There's a lesser known one in Gombak, I believe, I've read up, which is very sad indeed. And to see the condition that it's in, I read online that people did come and visit, but these visits have become more few and far. And now I guess this is how it looks. So as you can see, to get up to this area, you've got to come up almost kind of a dirt path. The road is paved, but it is essentially in the middle of nowhere. The problem with all of that was you couldn't actually get any close to the gravestones because it was so overgrown. I'll give you a quick once of the area. This is it. So we're now in Utama, but I just want to say that grab driver basically said to us, he said, "What are you doing in this area?" He said, I said, do tourists not come here? He said, no. He said, you're the first ever tourist I've ever seen in this area. First tourist he's ever seen in this area. What's funny is when we were in that area, people were looking a bit confused. Everyone from their bikes, everyone from their cars were all looking a bit puzzled to why we were in this area. And we told him why we were in the area, but he wasn't too surprised, to be honest, when we mentioned the memorial.
Even know much about it. Wasn't very reactive in general, would say. No. It's not that he was not surprised, it was just
he didn't Julie's right, he didn't react much at all. It makes me wonder, when it's overgrown like that, and I have read that there are visitors few and far in between, you know, how many people actually know about this place and how much is it actually talked about? Anyway, what we're going to do later in the day is we're going to go over to Kampung Baru and the walk to Chokit, where the original riots took place, and we're going to chat about it then. The other thing I wanted to quickly say was, it was all very quick and rushed there, and I do appreciate we didn't spend long there. I didn't want to film there too long, out of respect, but it is very tranquil around there, and it is very sad. But I think, as I said, it's very important to learn and understand the past so that things like that aren't ever repeated. You know, regardless, I think whether you are a foreigner or not, you can learn things from other countries and how other countries have dealt with these sorts of events. Right, anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. To come to some of the original locations where these race riots initially occurred and these clashes. As you can see, everything has completely changed. There is literally nothing left on this side. I believe the house and the rally first started along over here, but obviously there's so much building work done now that it doesn't exist anymore. You've got Kampung Baru on the left, and Kampung Baru still exists. I mean, there's a lot of causes, and I don't want to really focus in too much on the causes because it's not really my place to say. And from what I've read online, there was a growing divide economically between the Chinese and the Malay. They say that most of the businesses were owned by Chinese. These racial tensions essentially boiled up, and there was a Malay rally up the road at Harun Idris's house. The rally of, I believe it was anything in the line of 1,000 people or more Malay had gathered here, and they marched down this road and attacking shop fronts. You know, these attacks were indiscriminate. I mean, so that is a quote of essentially what happened. And you can tell that during these race riots, no one was safe. Although the original mob was a Malay mob, there was retaliations from all sides and taunts from all sides. And in some cases, I read that people did not leave their houses for something like 3 days. So this all took place in the evening, around 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the evening, and by about 8 o'clock there was national headlines and a state of emergency basically declared, where they said that there's going to be a national curfew. It must have been absolutely terrifying for everyone and anyone. The stories are absolutely horrifying. The fact that it happened 51 years ago, and you know, there hasn't been anything like it since, shows you that Malaysia had done something right there. And I know there are a few causes, and whether that was the social divide, the economic divide between the Chinese and the majority of the Malay, or the potential liberal policies at the time which were put in place that caused tension and racial tensions between communities. But what we can say from that is, today when you walk around Malaysia, you see such a diverse country, and a country that lives generally racially in harmony. And when you compare that to the West, when you compare that to the US, where there is mass distrust in the police, where the black community do not trust the police, Donald Trump creating such tension between races, and you know, it's mental to think that, you know, in a Western country like the US or the UK, where things should be very developed, clearly their racial relations aren't. And you know, this is where, and the reason why I wanted to examine and look at how Malaysia dealt with these riots and what Malaysia did to basically deal with it. But what they did as a country was, in response, they didn't blame any race for any of these racial riots. What they did is they introduced a number of different things to basically ease tensions and create a racial harmony. So the government didn't blame anyone for the uprising or the riots. They didn't blame the rally and the mob for the issues. They didn't blame the Chinese for taking over the businesses. What they did is they chased a fairer deal for everyone, and they did this by creating more opportunities and creating better prospects for the local people, which is the Malay and the, as they call it, the Bumiputra. I can't pronounce it. But they chased a fairer deal for them, and then for the Chinese and for the Indians. Apparently, what they did is they created and gave certain communities like that citizenship. So everyone was giving, although some of them, you know, the Bumiputra and the Malay were given better prospects and better deals, the Chinese and the Indians were given citizenship. And that was done through the new economic policy that was brought in. They also brought into place the Rukun Negara, which basically is done at official events, it's taught at school, and it's about promoting equality and respecting and understanding the racial diversity in Malaysia. And that's taught to kids at a young age. And you know, they do that under the Malaysian flag, which creates the unity under the flag, and that is something in the West we do not do. People are not proud to be English, you know, because being proud to be English, you're sometimes seen as a racist or a nationalist, you know, and it's the same in the US. It's becoming the same in the US now. People who used to be proud of the flag there are now seen as nationalists and rednecks and people who you don't want to be associated with because they clearly don't believe in Black Lives Matter, and they're, you know, a bad bunch. You can't generalize and say that's entirely, and I think, you know, if the West could unite and, you know, support their diverse ethnicities and, you know, support everyone so that everyone is proud to be English, or everyone is proud to be American, or, you know, whatever European country, people feel a part of that community, you know, because clearly there is divide, and clearly people aren't a part of the major community. I'm not sure I'll put this in because it gets all a bit political here, and I really don't want to politicize this, but I just want to respect how things have been dealt with here. You know, you can't directly compare the racial riots of 1969 in Malaysia to what is happening in America, because it is different, and we respect that it is different, so there's no comparison. But what the point we wanted to make was how this country had gone through turmoil and problems, but now, you know, they've got past that, and obviously there are going to be problems. It's a very, very difficult topic that will forever, you know, be an issue for a lot of countries. But generally, Malaysia feels very different to how things are in the UK, in the US, and in Europe right now. You see these Chinese run restaurants that are visited by, you know, visited by Malay or Indian communities, and these mamak restaurants, which everyone dearly loves because, you know, you can watch the football, you can have some roti canai, you know, and you can sit there all day. In the UK, you know,
there are certain communities, and they kind of live separated from the others.
Yeah.
It's not. It feels like the culture is not a uniform. It's just different communities. It doesn't feel that everyone is part of the same culture, you know.
So what Julie was saying, just a bit. I don't want to go on, but in the UK, in the US, or in the UK for sure, because I'm from the UK, it generally feels like a lot of the time, a lot of communities don't integrate well with each other, and that's the difference between here is we can't say it generally because we don't know it deep enough, and I'm sure you guys will know it better than we do, but from what we've seen, cultures and, you know, communities, they do integrate here, and people are proud to call everything Malaysian, you know, with roti canai, you know, through to even things like banana leaf. Of course, banana leaf and stuff is South Indian, but South Indian cuisine that's eaten frequently here, and it falls under the kind of Malaysian food umbrella, you know, and that's what the beauty of it. All of these different things have been brought in by different communities from India, from China, from the Bumiputra, the Malay communities. There is a real mixture of foods here.
Obviously, we are not local, so we can say how it is from their perspective.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to be honest, when I lived in Sweden, it was kind of the same as being in the UK. In the sense, obviously, like on a much smaller scale, because there are not as many different communities, but there are different communities. And I can tell you, in Sweden, it feels exactly the same as the UK, in the sense that no one is integrated with Swedish culture at all.
Really?
Yeah, so if you live in the center of the cities,
yeah,
the main cities like center of Gothenburg, center of Stockholm, you see a lot of Swedish people.
Right.
And they don't really interact with anyone else from different cultures. If you go out, if you go out like in the suburbs around the main cities, both in Gothenburg and Stockholm, because I've seen it, then you start seeing different cultures and different communities, and they don't integrate at all with anyone. They don't integrate with the Swedes. They live in Sweden, but they live in their small communities. That's it. It's
interesting what Julia said about Sweden, and it just shows you what the situation is in like Europe. So this is, you know, it comes as no surprise why we're having some of these issues. And I think, as I said, and when we come back to Malaysia, you know, there are some experiences Malaysia's had that other countries could learn from. Obviously, I want to say nothing is perfect, and I don't want us. And you know, I want to put a disclaimer in there and just say this is just either from personal experiences or sources online that we've read. Hopefully this video won't be too political. I've tried to keep politics out of it, but just by showing a sense of respect for what Malaysia has done as a country. And now, I mean, look at these amazing, amazing views of the city. You've got the Petronas.